Hello everyone, today we will be going through the basic structure and function of the cell membrane. So to start out, we're going to start out with what the cell membrane is made of. And primarily the cell membrane consists of phospholipids. Phospholipids are a lipid containing a phosphate group in its molecule. As you can see here, that would be the phosphate group. And the phospholipid is amphipathic, meaning it has both hydrophilic and hydrophobic parts. This is the phospholipid head. The phospholipid head consists of a glycerol molecule, which kind of surrounds the phosphate molecule, two fatty acids, and a phosphate group that is modified by an alcohol. And the alcohol is up here. The phospholipid head is hydrophilic, meaning it has a tendency to mix with, dissolve in, or be wetted with water. These are the phospholipid tails down here. The phospholipid tail is a lipid containing a phosphate group. These are hydrophobic, which meaning that they have a tendency to repel water from its surface. Okay, so just to review. If this is our water, it'll be repelled from here. But up top here, it'll be saturated into the molecule because this is hydrophilic and this is hydrophobic. Now, another important thing to note is the difference between the two fatty acid tails. You can see here that this is a straight line, meaning that this is a saturated fatty acid. Now, this here is not straight. It's bent like that, which indicates that this tail right here is unsaturated. It's an unsaturated fatty acid. Okay, and up top also, we have a glycerol molecule here surrounding the phosphate molecule. There's just not enough space to actually write out the elements in the Lewis structure. All right. Okay, the next step of our analysis is the actual phospholipid bilayer diagram. The phospholipid bilayer consists of two layers of phospholipids. See up top here and down here. With a hydrophobic or water-hating interior, which comes from, again, the phospholipid tails, and a water-loving exterior, which comes from the hydrophilic heads. Okay, so there are a lot of other things within the cell membrane other than the phospholipids. So let's look at those. So the first one that we should look at is the integral protein. Integral proteins are these two right here. They're both the protein channel and the protein pump. Integral proteins is a type of membrane protein that is permanently attached to the biological membrane. Now, what do the protein pump and the protein channel do? The protein pumps and the protein channels both are forms of letting things into and out of the cell. So the protein pump, for example, is an integral part of active transport. So if an ion, let's use a different color. If an ion is trying to come into the cell, right? It's moving from an area of, it's moving, when it goes into the protein pump, it'll be moving from an area of low concentration or high concentration to an area of low concentration. So there will be a lot of work being done by the protein pump. So when the protein pump pumps it in, it'll go into the inside of the cell, and this is inside the cell. This is inside the cell, and this is is that in the frame? Yeah. And this is outside the cell. Okay. So the next after the integral proteins, we have to look at the peripheral proteins. The peripheral proteins are membrane proteins that adhere only temporarily to the biological membrane with which they are associated. So these do not always have to be attached to the cell membrane. All right, next we have cholesterol. And that's over here. Cholesterol is an organic molecule. It is a sterol, a type of lipid molecule, and is a waxy-like fat substance that's found in all the cells in your body, okay? Now, cholesterol makes the surface of the membrane. So cholesterol doesn't only have to be on that side of the bilayer. It could be up here as well. So if we have a cholesterol up there or cholesterol down here, it helps maintain the solidity of the membrane. So another example we could look at could be, let's say you have a wall, right? And you have a bunch of bricks in the wall. Okay, so you have a bunch of bricks in the wall. Now, if there weren't anything between the bricks, ions, or in this case ions, things could get in past your wall, right? So we put material in between the bricks in order to seal it up and make it both more firm so that the shape of the wall can't change, as well as to stop outside elements from getting into your structure. And in this case, it works the same way. Cholesterol would be the caulk between the bricks. Okay, so it would stop ions that the cell doesn't need from getting into the cell. Okay, and it would also help maintain the firm surface of the cell membrane. Okay. Next, we have glycoproteins. Sorry about that. Glycoproteins are any of a class of proteins that have carbohydrate groups attached to the polypeptide chain. This could also be called glycopeptide. Now, what does the glycoprotein actually do? Well, okay, so glycoproteins, they are kind of outside the cell. You can see how this kind of rises above the rest of the cell membrane. They form hydrogen bonds with the water molecules surrounding the cell on the outside. And by doing this, by forming these hydrogen bonds, we know that hydrogen bonds are kind of strong, right? So if you have a hydrogen bond, then you know that there are a bunch of these glycoproteins throughout the cell membrane. You know that it'll be making the cell membrane more firm. So the glycoprotein assists in that mostly. And it also helps with other cell-to-cell interactions. But mostly it maintains the stability of the shape of the cell. Okay, so the last thing that we are going to be talking about are the functions of the cell membrane, the actual functions. So, in the cell membrane, we talked about the integral proteins, right? The protein pumps and the protein channels, right? So, the function that these indicate are the channels, okay? Channels are pores within a lipid bilayer. The channels are formed by large protein complexes that run across the membrane. They cross the cell membrane, connecting the cytosol or cytoplasm to the extracellular matrix. The extracellular matrix is just the outside of the cell. The channels allow certain ions to enter and exit the cell, okay? And it also prevents some ions from getting in, okay? Now, the next function of the cell are the carriers. The carrier proteins can transport ions and molecules either passively through facilitated diffusion or via secondary active transport. So they can either go through the protein pumps and the protein channels, or they can pass through the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, the next function is recognition. Recognition is an active process giving rise to a specific response. So, much like the characteristic of life response, the cell membrane also has recognition. This process is when a certain ion makes contact with the cell membrane moves to respond to that ion. Okay? Next are the receptors on the cell membrane. These receptors are an organ that is, or an organ is like not an organ, it's more of a molecule that is able to respond to light, heat, or other external stimuli and transmit a signal to the rest of the cell membrane to react to that in any way that it would need to. That could be how the light enters a plant cell in order to provide the cell with the energy. Okay, and finally, the final function of, oh my gosh, the final function of the cell membrane are enzymes. Enzymes are a substance produced by a living organism that acts as a catalyst to bring about specific biochemical reactions. Okay? All right, that is everything. Thank you for watching.